Welcome back, everyone, to the GDFL podcast hosted by yours truly, Andrew Korn. This week we have Ryan Plumstead and Levi Hubbard join me today.
Go Lions.
Go Lions.
Go Lions.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
I can.
Yes.
You can. Okay, cool. I'm fucking around a lot right now. All right. Don't see our faces up here, but that's all right. Hopefully it all records just fine. And so this past week was a pretty interesting week. I even had a win over Sokol. We had Stun with a win over Shrew or Barbara. We had Levi with a pretty big win over Jake. We had Logan with a win over Beans. We have Mark with a win over Trevor. And then we have Chaz with a win over Ryan. Boys, any thoughts on this past week's matchups?
I thought it was a pretty big week for a lot of teams that were middle of the pack type of teams. Obviously, winning's pretty major for my season, but teams like Jake, Barbara, and Sokol all seem to have these losses seem pretty monumentous at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one thing that's to note on my end is just all of the blowouts. There really wasn't a close game. I mean, I guess Beans and Logan were within 14 points of each other, but that's still a pretty significant win. So
Yeah, there was one point just because I was keeping an eye on it because Beans was actually favored to win for a little bit after Lamar had his fifth touchdown, but then James Conner had a pretty big fourth quarter to put that one away. But that one actually was close for a little bit last night.
okay.
Yeah, most of these weren't particularly close. My
Yeah.
team bounced back. I mean, Shrew or Barbara had a pretty pathetic week. And same with Jake's team. There was a really just like looking across the board, every loser had under 100, which is not particularly strong when you have 10 starters.
Chaz solidified the number 1 seed so far. Good for Chaz.
Yep. Yeah, and Stun moved into second. All right, yeah, and then here's a look at the standings. Yeah, we have Chaz is I think a pretty clear first place now. He has a pretty wide lead in total points scored. He has about 150-ish more than Stun, who's in second. And Stun's points forward is pretty close to Jake's, who is 2-5, but Stun's 6-1. So good for Stun. He's just finding ways to win. And then there's me and you there, Ryan, at 5-2. Got Mark there at 4-3. And then we have a pretty big glut of teams here at 3-4 and 2-5. Levi, Barbara, and Beans all at 3-4. Then we got Jake, Sokol, and Logan all at 2-5. And then down at the bottom, there's Trevor at 1-6. I think we're starting to see, at least the standings, how I anticipate them are going to start to shake out a little bit these next few weeks. I mean, I don't think Stun's going to, I mean, if we're going to use points scored as a metric here, don't think Stun's going to hold that second place if he keeps on getting wins the way he does. If I remember correctly when I was looking, I think only one of his opponents has scored 100 points all season. So it's pretty easy to win when you're when the bar to beat's 100 instead of like the league average is around 120 most years, I want to say.
Yeah. Those team things tend to average themselves out most of the time, but starting off 6-1 is certainly, I think, better than Stun anticipated going into the year, but schedule's everything. You can only play who's in front of you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, really, I'm just like looking at the standings. 7-7 is probably gonna be good enough to make the playoffs this year. I mean, Stun's really probably only one win away from making it. So, I mean, unless his team completely falters down the stretch, it's probably looking at potentially a top 4 seed and still, I think, very much in play for a bye. I mean, he's pretty low on draft capital, but like if he trades away his first for another impact player, like who knows what will happen. He's been riding Jordan Mason for a little bit. I think that's going to come to an end in the next couple of weeks, but Stun's been able to pull off some W's, and yeah, like I said, he probably only needs one more to make the playoffs. So
good for Stun.
Mm-hmm.
For Stun.
Now, one I want to talk about is Barbara here. Barbara had a pretty rough week with Ayuk and Deshaun Watson going down with season-ending injuries. I mean, Ayuk had a pretty nasty ACL and MCL tear. I don't think there's a guarantee he's back week 1 of next season either. If you're hearing his MCL had some tear in it as well, I mean that's probably gonna be a pretty long rehab. And I feel like there's a lot all of us could say about Deshaun Watson. I personally never root for injuries. I'm just gonna leave it at that. But yeah, I mean Barbara is a good thing. Barbara drafted Caleb Williams is all I'm gonna say with the way that the season's been going. Because I mean Deshaun Watson's now toast. Brissett got benched. I think this might be Stafford's last year in the NFL with the way he's been playing, and I don't think he has any guaranteed money on his contract after this year. So, Barber might be in the market for a QB3 here in the near future. Decides to go that route. But yeah, a lot of injuries for Barber right now, and playoff hopes are looking a little bleak. Things currently stand.
It was a great week, wasn't it?
It'll be interesting to see if Barb leans one way or the other, whether he wants to lean towards the rebuild and trade away some of those running backs, or maybe he wants to lean towards making the playoffs this year. I don't think that status quo is gonna make him much of a contender. He might slip into the playoffs, but yeah, with those injuries, with Watson going down, with Ayuk going down, it isn't looking. It's looking bleak, I think is a good word.
Yeah, not that Ayuk was really doing much this year to begin with, but you still just losing a player of like his caliber still just isn't anything you want to see. But yeah,
Wilson will be good too, but he's going to be targeted a bit less now with Adams in town.
Yeah, I mean, one glimmer of hope might be that Puka's, I think, got designated to return from IR, so Puka will be back in the next couple weeks. Not sure if that, and Jonathan Taylor's been out the last few weeks too, so like both of those injections in the starting lineup absolutely could change things. But yeah, good thing Barbara has all this depth to withstand all these injuries. So see what happens there. Yeah, and then really even like all these teams that are 2-5, like I mean, both Jake and Sokol they're 2-5, but they're really only a game out of the playoffs still. Like there's still plenty of time for either of them to go on a run here. Like I said, I think 7-7 will probably be good enough to make the playoffs this year. And so really going 5-2 down the stretch isn't totally outlandish. All said and done.
I think it'll be really interesting. Rever made a comment on his pod last week that it'll be interesting to see who's willing to sell, because it seems like there's going to be a lot of buyers to fight tooth and nail to get into the playoffs. Because I mean, we all know that anything can happen once you make it in. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the trade market is as the deadline kind of approaches here.
Yeah, and then following Mike Evans' injury this week, I inquired with a few different teams about buying some players, about getting another flex for the next few weeks. And Trevor doesn't really seem too adamant on selling anyone else. I mean, he seems pretty content with his current roster, and unless he gets something he can't refuse, he's not going to sell because he thinks he's already going to get the first overall pick. So,
just Jameis.
Yeah, I mean, Jameis, and there's about 3 or 4 teams in this league I think could use another quarterback. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the next slide here, if we look at the max points for Trevor now has about 100-point lead there. And so if things continue to go at this rate, I mean, I don't know, it'll be hard for someone to catch him unless there's like really just a massive fire sale going on.
I don't really see, I mean, Logan doesn't have the incentive to lose the max PF ranking. And then, you look at Sokol, Jake Pruitt. I mean, all of the rest of the teams towards the bottom of the max PF rating, they're all looking to get into the playoffs. So I don't anticipate any fire sales, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really either. I mean, both Sokol and Jake could start to pivot that way. And like they're definitely still in play for the number 2 pick if they decide to go that way. And really probably, I mean, Tyreek Hill and Kamara are the ones who would probably be easiest to move off of, who would help lower that score. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at like 2 teams that are currently out of the playoff picture, but I mean, both Shrew and Beans are kind of creeping up there and with max points. And so it's probably, I don't think either of them are going to have too much incentive to like be massive sellers. I mean, they'll still probably sell to try and lower as much as possible if things go south a little bit more, but they're not really in the contention for the 101 either. Not that selling only gets you the 101. I mean, there's other incentive to do it too, but
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, again, all those teams you mentioned are a win away from making the playoffs. So it'd be hard to see all of that happen at this point, I think.
yeah, I mean, Barbara's 20 points behind Levi right now for the last spot, and then Beans is 30 points behind Levi. So it doesn't even have to, just has to match the record and outscore. It doesn't even have to get more wins necessarily either.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Mark is the leader in max points for the first time. Not that that really matters. What really matters is how good you are at setting your lineup, but it's just always fun for me to look at. And then looking at the week upcoming, so we have a championship rematch between Chaz and I. We have a battle of 2 and 5 teams between Sokol and Logan. We have Stun and Levi, which would be a pretty big matchup. We got the Poop Hive with Ryan taking on Jake. We got Beans and Mark, and then we got Barbara and Trevor. And so, I mean, I think obviously the biggest matchup of the week is me and Chaz in the championship rematch. I mean, I think if I had to pick 2 teams to be top 2 in the league, I mean, I'd probably pick mine and his, with Chaz being the one. Though Chris Godwin being out for the season is a pretty big blow.
He's got CMC coming back.
Yeah, he's still got CMC coming back. So, and I still think Chaz is the bit of the front runner here. Another big one, I think, is Stun versus Levi. Like I said, I'm not like Stun's been pulling off some lucky wins here. Levi's been on the other side of the ledger, currently 6-1 against the median, but only with a 3-4 record. So I think this is a pretty big one for Levi in terms of making the playoffs.
Especially when you look at the teams that are in my range, like Shrew's probably going to win this week. And I was looking at one.
Yeah.
Sokol could win this week. Sokol will probably win this week.
Yeah, I mean, one of Sokol and Logan has to win. I guess they could tie, but one of them will win. And then, I mean, Mark and Beans is another one where,
yeah,
I mean, Mark's a pretty big favorite, but I don't know. I'm not really trusting these projections. This is just whoever was left in the lineup from last week. So should be some good matchups. I mean, I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think we're getting the matchups that'll kind of help define the rest of the season, right? If Logan wins this one, I think that's 3 in a row for him, and maybe he's starting to claw his way back into playoff contention. Whereas if Sokol loses, man, he's got a good aging roster, but does he sell all? Does he have the fire sale that would be expected at 2 and 6? Right? I think he highlighted Stun and Levi. Well, Mark and Beans again. You know, Beans kind of fits that similar category of if he gets a win, I mean, he's right there tooth and nail in the playoff contention. And Mark, you know, he's right on the cusp of another bad loss, and he's outside of the playoff picture. So could be interesting.
All right. Here's the thing that everyone came in to listen for is talk about Lions football coming off a big win against Minnesota last week. Man, what a game that was. It really started off as felt like just a classic SOL game, especially with going for it on that 4th down, or going for that fake punt and just immediately giving up a touchdown. But Lions got it done. How are you guys feeling about this past week?
Wonderful. Bend, don't break.
Yeah, I feel good. I feel good. I'm a proud Lion this week. I think you know, I think we'll probably get more into it, but we gave ourselves a lot of adversity to face. And that's one way to look at it, is why are you shooting yourself in the foot? On the flip side of that is, wow, look at all the adversity that we overcame, and still pulled out against a very, very good team. So.
Yeah, I mean, I really think the Lions really were in control most of that game, both on both sides of the ball. But again, like you said, a lot of that was the self-inflicted wounds. There's the fake punt where Montgomery's fumble being returned for a touchdown. It's like,
yeah, I agree. I mean, I expect our offense to control most games. I mean, we have weapons at every level. But yeah, I think that the self-inflicted wounds are what we need to clean up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something that I thought was encouraging was Terry and Arnold played a very clean game. He wasn't called for a penalty, I don't think, for the first time all season. And like I think I remember seeing something. He only allowed one catch for 14 yards this past week. Like Arnold against a pretty like Addison and Jefferson is a pretty damn good receiver duo. And for him to lock in that this past week is great, pretty encouraging to see. And then yeah, Brian Branch had that massive interception and had a couple pass deflections. I mean, Brian Branch is someone I really think is going to be in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year when the
He
season's all
should
said and
be.
done. I mean,
Yeah.
he's all over the field, like both run game, pass game. He's literally, it feels like he's always there to make a play.
He doesn't miss tackles either. He hits and he hits hard and he wraps up. I'm a big Brian Branch guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. It's crazy that he fell to the second round in the draft last year. It's like, I mean, even the Lions passed on him twice. Like, it's
An Alabama safety. Why would you do that?
yeah. I know his athleticism wasn't the best, but I feel like all the film on him, like you can see just how talented he is and how good of a tackler he
Was
is.
it 3 times that they passed on him? Because they did Gibbs, Campbell, and Laporta.
Oh yeah, that'd be 3 times they passed on him. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, damn. Yeah, so I have a few different topics we can talk about. One I wanted came up yesterday that I want to bring up is Jameson Williams getting suspended. Well, I guess the league never officially announced it yet, but Dan Campbell kind of like was hinting at it and talking on the radio this morning. But yeah, JMO got 2 games that are suspected to get a 2 game suspension for PEDs. For only being 2 games, my guess is he took something like Adderall without prescription. Or like it's something I don't know. For it to only be 2 games, it's gonna be something really dumb. Like Sokol had texted me, he thinks it might be something like Sudafed. Um,
Oh wow.
just yeah, I don't know. I could be wrong. It's just like it's kind of it's a little discouraging to see him get suspended a second time for 2 3 years now, but
Yeah.
But it's only 2.
Yeah. There's 2 sides of this coin, right? The first side is thankfully it's only 2. JMO's been a major contributor, and the next 2 games for the Lions are, I mean, we do have the Packers, but we have Tennessee next, and rather have it happen now rather than week 16, 17, 18, or even first couple rounds of the playoffs. Other side of that coin though is, what is this guy doing? You should say what you want about, like, okay, a player should take or be allowed to take marijuana or be allowed to take Adderall or whatever, but there's another part of this where he's getting paid a lot of money to understand the rules, and it's unfortunate that he hasn't learned the rules of the game, I guess.
mhm. Yeah, it's just like both the things he's been suspended for now are kind of dumb. I mean, I really we need to learn more about what his suspension, like what actually caused the suspension. But I have a feeling since it's only 2 games though, like it just can't be anything that major. And like I don't know, he posts on his like Instagram story of like him eating McDonald's and like he puts like part of a McFlurry on a cheeseburger. It's just like I have a really hard time believing that like he's like roiding up, but
No, I don't think he's roiding up, but I just think he needs to like be smarter.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I really like JMO. Like off the field, I feel like he does everything right. He's always showing up in the community. He's always like going to like local restaurants and hosting youth camps. He goes to high school football games on Fridays. Like everything he does off the field is spectacular. It's just yeah, I don't know. Just, he's a better head on top of that shoulder, I guess, at least in terms of just like you said, Ryan, just knowing the rules.
Yeah, just know the rules, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another player I want to talk about was Jared Goff. and the way he's been playing the last month now. I mean, we got off to a slow start the first couple weeks of the season. I think a lot of that was just from not playing in the preseason, but Goff's playing at MVP level right now. Like he's been.
I was just gonna say, who are your top MVP candidates? Because I think Lamar's certainly in that conversation,
Yeah, I mean,
and Jared Goff.
I think it's Lamar, Baker, and Goff if we're gonna put like three people in the conversation.
Yeah,
That'd be who I'd pick. You. It's
you could,
awesome because you didn't think Baker was going to make it. You
Yeah.
knew Lamar would make it, but for Goff to make it, we never would have imagined that when he was on the Rams. It's crazy to
Mhm.
look back now and realize, like, man, sometimes these quarterbacks just need a second chance somewhere else.
I mean, Darnold's another example of that. Like Gino, there's like countless examples of where it has happened for like some of these talented guys taken early who just weren't in the right situation or coaching failed them or like whatever the circumstances are. But yeah, I mean, the way Goff's been playing right now, I mean, he's been like the biggest criticism of Goff over his entire career is he's been bad against the blitz and under pressure, and he's arguably the best quarterback against the blitz right now. I mean, he's just been slicing and dicing defenses for lack of better words. Like Brian Flores this past week has been pretty known to bring the blitz and bring the pressure and like players not knowing where it comes from. But Goff handled it so well. I mean, a lot of that's on the offensive line. Lions do have one of the best offensive lines, if not the best. But the way Goff's been playing under pressure, been playing with a clean pocket, he's playing pretty special football right now. I mean, he's been highly accurate and not turning it over. You really can't ask more of that out of your quarterback.
and it's not just he's not just playing catch with his buddies either. He's really making some really tough throws with guys who are pulling at his arms and his jersey. It has not been clean
Mhm.
really, but they've been accurate throws, and he hasn't been turning it over like you said.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch. I'm expecting. I mean, who knows how the rest of the season is going to go? But man, he's been. If he keeps playing like this, the Lions are might do something special this year. We'll see what happens.
Did you guys know that since Brian Flores has been the defensive coordinator for the Vikings, that 4 times 30 points have been put up against Brian Flores as the D coordinator for the Vikings, and 3 of them have been against the Lions.
I did not see that. That's awesome though.
Go Lions.
Go Lions. No, I saw something. I think it's man, I can't remember the exact like metric it was, but it was like the Lions like are the most efficient team in football on both sides of the ball. Like I think like it's like DVOA and OVOA maybe, but like we were top five in both. And it was like the first time since the 2019 Ravens that a team had been this dominant on both sides of the ball, which is, I mean, it's encouraging to see. The defense is, even without Hutchinson this past week, I thought the defense looked really good.
Yeah, I think we struggled to pressure the quarterback a little bit, and I think that's a topic of later in the podcast here. But yeah, I feel like the biggest knock on the Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell era has mostly been on using Aaron Glenn as a scapegoat a little bit. We've all had our fair share of talking our shit and saying, why are you running this, or what schematically, why are you doing that? But this year overall, he's been really, really impressive. And I don't think that I mean, I was saying after the 10-point lead for the Vikings, I was telling Adam and my dad, I was like, this has got to be an AG game. He's got to keep us in this game. Got to be a bend don't break type of game. And boy, right from that moment, we pretty much flipped the script. So it hasn't been perfect. It's not like he's running 80s Bears defense or anything like that, but he's run the D the way it's supposed to keep giving the offense opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I kind of said it better. I mean, I think a lot of it this year, I mean, the secondary is completely revamped. I mean, we moved Branch from the nickel to safety. I mean, Kirby Joseph seems to have taken the leap. Terry and Arnold and Carlton Davis has been a much improved cornerback duo than Ryan Kendall Vildor last year. So the
right.
secondary is much improved. Jack Campbell looks like he's taken a step forward this year. He looks a lot better than he did as a rookie. And then Ali McNeil in the middle has just been absolute monster, both like stopping the run and rushing the passer. And he got a
He
pretty well
certainly earned that
paycheck.
contract.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I think that's been pretty cool that's been happening lately is I mean the Lions culture seems to be if you work hard, you come in, work hard, play hard, you're gonna get rewarded. I mean, every pretty much every player who's been eligible for an extension has signed one in the past year. I mean, Goff signed one, Sewell got one, Amon Ross got one. Those are kind of the big ones. But even like some of the small, like Decker signed an extension when he was someone where I thought they're gonna have to choose between someone at some point, but they still extended Decker. They gave Aleem McNeil his extension. They gave Monty an extension recently. Like I think they're promoting a pretty good culture where if you work your ass off and you play hard, you're going to get rewarded for it. And I think it's pretty encouraging to see.
It's
And
really
if the
unique
results
and
are there, right? It's not just about working hard, but all of those guys have the statistics and the PFF behind them to say that they're top 5, top 10 players at their position.
Mm-hmm.
it's very unique in the modern NFL too. I think if anything, that would encourage players to want to come play here.
Yeah, I mean, I think players are going to want to come play here. I just don't see the Lions being like they're going to be a free agent destination, but I don't think it's going to be for any long term contracts because all the long term extensions are going to be from guys Brad Holmes drafts. Like I'd love to love for the Lions to be like that free agent destination, and maybe players just start taking less money to come here to like be a part of the team. I mean, that's something that happened a lot with Brady and some of those years with the Patriots and like some of those other like star teams where just good players take less just to be a part of a winning culture. But
The unfortunate reality is that at some point the cap is going to catch up and we're going to have to make a decision as to who's going to go, who's not going to get the extension. And I'm curious to see where that lands, right? No matter how good JMO is the rest of the year, I don't think he's getting his extension at least this offseason. We're going to need to see another good year out of him before he gets a sizable extension.
mhm.
Gibbs is another guy who, unfortunate reality of his position group is tough to come by a long-term extension. Yeah, we'll see though.
Yeah, I mean some other players like Laporta's gonna. I mean, we're still again like at least a year away, or probably 2 years away in terms of like actual timing. But from some of these guys getting their extension, Laporta's one, Gibbs is one. Ragnow, I mean, he apparently was contemplating retirement this offseason. Who knows where his head's lying currently?
Hutch needs one. We gotta
Yeah,
make sure
Have
that
to
the
have
books are
one.
set so that we get Hutch.
yeah. Hutch is one where, like, I mean, they were going to have to make him the highest paid defensive player in the league before his injury. And I'm sure that's probably still what's going to be what happens post injury. But that's one where it's kind of tough for me to, at least right now, without seeing what he comes back and looks like post injury, seeing is he gonna like? I think he's gonna earn it. I mean, I think he's gonna work his ass off to get back on the field and hopefully still be productive. But man, that break was just absolutely nasty, and hoping for the best for him. That's one that injuries like that always really concern me.
The fortunate reality in terms of that injury, though, is that it was a bone break. I mean, as grotesque as it was still just a bone break, right?
Mhm.
The probability of recovering from a bone break is significantly higher than recovering from ligament damage, right? So ACL, MCL, sometimes those just don't go well. Whereas this is just the bones need to heal, right? The only concern would be like a back injury or I guess like a head injury.
Or like, I mean, for him to go into emergency surgery, like artery was one that was kind of a concern for me too.
Yep, yep.
So,
But but there haven't been reports of that, so um, you know,
mhm.
I
Sounds
I
like it
am
went as
I
well
am
as it
hopeful
could.
that things are just fine.
You're saying something, Levi?
Sounds like it went as well as it could. And I've read that on multiple sources this week that it's just bone on bone, which is very ideal. Um,
Mhm.
there was a stream, I think, where you could watch the game with his family, like them being in the living room or something. But I don't know. I didn't watch that stream.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard good things, I guess. And I'm not too worried about it. I wouldn't mind if we traded for a pass rusher now, though, because getting one now isn't going to hurt us. And even if we can't afford to keep him, there's a real good shot that we could have them paired with him next year. And
Mm-hmm.
that just seems like the best thing we could do for our team.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you guys have any potential trade targets you think they're going to go after or should go after?
I'm saying Myles Garrett. Things look horrible in Cleveland. There's no need for him to want to stay there. He's old enough that I think we could afford the draft capital, and just seems like a match made in heaven at this point in the season.
Yeah, I think any of the high hitters are ideal fits, right? If you give up 2 1s and you go get a Myles Garrett or a Max Crosby, I think every Lions fan is very happy to draft Max Crosby this year, next year, especially when he's locked down. Some other names I was thinking about beforehand. Um, I think if the 49ers continue to implode, we could go get a Nick Bosa. Could also say the same about Joey Bosa in LA. Harold Landry with the Titans, another guy that continues to come up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of the names I was thinking about, I really would love for the Lions to go get that Max Crosby or the Myles Garrett. It just doesn't seem like the way Brad Holmes has operated to this point. I mean, the Rams at a certain point were fuck them picks, and he does come from that Rams organization.
Yep.
But I mean, the move I think they're going to like Harold Landry was a name on the list. I think of someone they could pretty realistically acquire. Trey Hendrickson with the Bengals is someone I think they could potentially be going after. And I think Hendrickson played under Aaron Glenn in New Orleans. And then the other one was Zadarius Smith, I think, with the Browns. Uh,
Yep.
That was the other name that I think I've seen pop up a few times. But I really would love for him to go make that big splash play and be like, yeah, like this is our window. We're going for it. I think Holmes is pretty calculated in a lot of decisions he makes, and I think we're more likely to give up like a second or a third or a fourth and go after like that tier B of players rather than going for the home run swing. But I mean, I'd love to be surprised. I mean, I'd love to see Max Crosby or Myles Garrett in a Lions uniform, especially that'd be fucking sick having Aiden Hutchinson and either Myles Garrett or Crosby lining up beside him with DJ Reader and McNeil in the middle. That'd be a filthy, filthy defensive line.
Yeah, I think realistically, one of those tier 2, tier 3 edge rushers is a more realistic target, but I'd love to have a home run swing. I'd love it.
Mm-hmm.
Harold Landry seems like the happy medium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, so something I know this isn't talking about the Lions here, but Cooper Kupp's been in a lot of trade rumors. Do you guys think he actually gets traded? Do you guys
I
think
do not.
you do not?
No, I don't. I think Stafford will get healthy, start to get right as soon as Kupp comes back. Like you stated earlier, Puka's coming back, and that offense hums when those two guys are in it. So, I think that that's probably more media talk than anything else. But I could be proven wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I saw they want a second for him, and I just don't. He might be worth that, but I don't think anyone wants to pay that for a wide receiver at this point. Because
Mm-hmm.
anyone that's trading for him is probably going to make him their wide receiver two at best. I just don't think anyone's going to want to give that up for a wide receiver two on their team.
Yeah, I did see that the Rams might be willing to eat his entire contract, though. And I think if that happens, that makes it a lot more appealing for some of the opposing teams. No, I mean I've talked about it a little bit. I think if he does get traded though, the Bucks I think are probably the most logical fit, and you can put him into where Chris Godwin was playing this year, especially since Liam Cohen, who comes from Los Angeles and coached Cup in LA. I think he'd be able to fit in with the Bucks offense pretty easily. I mean the Steelers and Commanders have been talks of receivers for a while too now. It's like I'd love to see Cup on the Lions, but he already plays the same role as Amon Ra, so don't really need him. But I mean, he has that chemistry with Goff already too.
Oh God.
Yeah, no, imagine a receiver core of Amon Ra, Cup, JMO, Laporta, Gibbs.
Tim Patrick.
Tim Patrick, yeah, can't forget about Tim Patrick.
Give the guy his props.
Allen Robinson, the corpse of Allen Robinson might be getting some run here if Jamo getting suspended too. So it's all fun to think about, just like what the Lions could be doing to improve the team. I mean, really, like we talked about trading for an edge. And that's really the only thing I think they really need is just like bringing in another pass rusher. Like I think linebackers and DBs are all pretty secure at this point and all pretty solid. It's just getting that one more piece on the defensive line to finish the puzzle.
I'd agree. Another wide receiver would be fun. I don't know if I want it to be Cup, but there's no real need other than rusher. There's just wants.
Yep. No, so okay, so we're running out of time here. We got about 2 minutes left. But one I want to bring up was apparently so Sokol had texted me earlier this week about Jack Fox. He's now like played enough games to qualify for like the all-time punting lists. And
Fuck yeah.
think Fox was like second all time in like punting yards in terms of average, and then fourth in terms of like net return yards or net punting when you count the returns in. I might have it mixed up, but yeah, Jack Fox is an elite punter. I mean, Jake Bates had that game winner. Great kicker, great leg.
I still have anxiety about Jake Bates. How do you guys feel about Jake Bates?
Oh, I still have so much anxiety every time I watch him kick. I mean, he really wasn't very accurate in the USFL. So I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that like I feel like he's gonna be automatic, but like he's looked good so far, and I think his confidence is only growing. And hopefully with him, it's just a head case and not necessarily a talent thing because he has a leg. It just hopefully he can just be remain accurate.
Yeah, I think he's only missed one this year, which is credit to him. One extra point. I think he's hit all his field goals, but yeah, when he was lining up for that field goal with 20 seconds left or whatever, I had a lot of adrenaline and I was crossing my fingers and saying, "Come on, Jake!" And it did corkscrew a little bit on its way up and through. But yeah, I'll keep riding the wave.
All right, and then with that, we are at time. Ryan, Levi, thank you for joining the show. And for all the great folks who listen to the GDFL podcast, I hope you have a fantastic week. Go Lions.
Go Lions.
Go Lions.
All right. And with that, we are done.